Okay, so just to briefly explain this four-wheel drive system to everyone, you have the pump, which is above the rear diff. The whole hydraulic assembly is above the rear diff, which contains the pressure sensor, the accumulator, the valves, and the pump. And the way that all functions is the ATTESA computer, which is in the boot, which I'll show you. The ATTESA computer, that bad boy there, is reading the wheel speed sensors and also a G sensor, which is under the center console. And what that then decides is when to open and close the valves in the hydraulic assembly and apply pressure against the multi-plate clutch in the transfer case. And that essentially is what drives the front wheels. Now you've got the pump. The pump's job is to fill the accumulator with pressure, and the accumulator just stores it ready to apply against the transfer case. And the ECU controls the pump by this relay, which is in the boot here. I've got both of them hanging out. This is for the solenoids of the solenoid and valves assembly. And so the ECU will just command the pump to run with this brown wire here, and by connecting the yellow and red wire, you can force the pump to run, which I'll show you soon. And that's pretty well how the system works, or how it's supposed to work. However, I've been in a number of GTRs where that's not the case, and the owners don't even necessarily know that their four-wheel drive doesn't work. Because these cars they're designed to handle a bit like a rear-wheel drive car in the first place. With this whole complicated system, it's all designed around reducing understeer and helping you control oversteer. So yeah, the car, when this is all working, will still handle, it'll still slide a bit like a rear-wheel drive car, but it just will never wants to get out of hand, sort of thing, depending on how much power you've got, obviously. But yeah, a lot of people don't really understand how this system works, so I'll take you through diagnosing any problems with it and see how you go from there. Hopefully you can all have functioning four-wheel drive systems. Alright, so my car's very dirty at the moment, I apologise, but I've had some trouble with the ATTESA system, the four-wheel drive in my GTR. And from what I can gather, there is not really much clear information onto how to test it and diagnose it, so I thought I'd dumb it down for everyone. You've got this relay in the back here, which you have constant power at the yellow, battery power, comes from the fuse under the bonnet. You've got red, which is your power to the pump. So basically all this relay does is switches constant battery power to the pump, and that's controlled by this brown wire, which is a switching earth from the ATTESA ECU. Now I'll upload some pictures and stuff as to where this wire is, because you could have other troubles with it, but my pump basically didn't work, so I've been pulling this side of the system apart. My relay works fine. I've now fixed it. It was actually just the pump assembly, but to clarify, you can, I don't know if you can hear that, but just by manually closing this relay here, all that's doing is giving the pump power. I'll just lower the camera down here and close the relay again. Okay, so if you can, you don't have to use the relay to do this. You can pull these two plugs out and just short them to each other you should hear your pump buzz. They're fairly loud, these four-wheel drive pumps. So if your pump doesn't, if you can't hear your pump by just shorting them, basically your pump's stuffed, but that's not necessarily the problem. My problem was my pressure sensor was reading constant pressure in my four-wheel drive system, so by replacing my whole hydraulic assembly above the rear diff, it did fix it, but yeah, that it might not necessarily just be the pump. See, mine I believe was the pump because the pressure sensor was stuffed. I believe that's what stuffed the pump, was the pump not running for a number of years or however long. So I've finally replaced my pump. Again, the pressure sensor comes with that, so I'll just explain a bit how to diagnose it. If you can test continuity between this brown wire and the wire on the back of the ECU, I'll try and show you which wire that is. Okay, so where are we? This is the ATTESA computer. You've got this red light which will indicate any faults. I didn't have any faults with my fault, and I didn't have any codes or anything in the system with my fault, which is what made it so hard to diagnose. This far plug on the very far left of it, that you can see that brown wire right there, dead center. That is this brown wire here. So what the ECU does is switches that wire to ground, and that's what closes this relay. And also over here on the other side, second plug in, you can see this orange wire. It is the 4th pin, I believe. The 4th pin in from the driver's side on the bottom. Fairly easy to get to. If you back probe that pin and earth it, that basically tells the ECU that there is no pressure in the line and it needs to run the pump. You should hear this relay close. It's very loud. And okay, so once I worked that out, that by earthing that my ECU was telling the pump to run, I finally decided that I needed to replace the whole assembly because my pressure sensor was stuffed. And that's pretty well it. That's as far as my problems went, so hopefully this has helped everyone else out that's having trouble with their four-wheel drive system. Again, I've got no ignition power or anything. These are all constantly live, so because I've just primed that pump myself, the pump won't run. But what you should hear is, once you turn the ignition on, that's just my fuel pump. Once you turn the ignition on, you should hear that pump prime, and it's quite a lot louder than the fuel pump. I'll show you while I'm here. This plug here, this green and yellow wire that's behind the driver's kick panel, which I've got pulled off at the moment. If you unplug this, the system tries to run a line pressure to the transfer case. So as you can see now, my camera will ever focus again. As you can see now, it's now running constant line pressure of 10 kilogram meters, which is not an actual reading of pressure in that line. It's just what the ECU is trying to command the pump to drive as far as torque goes to the front wheels. So you shouldn't do this for too long. You can wear You can stuff the hydraulic assembly by leaving that unplugged and the ignition on for too long. So the ignition turned on, the pump primes for a few seconds depending on how long ago it last primed. And if you're not hearing that, then you've got a problem basically. If you never hear it, that is. You should only hear it once the car's sat around for a while and the accumulator in the hydraulic assembly has bled the pressure off very slowly. If anyone's got any questions or anything, I'm happy to help out. I've spent a fair bit of time diagnosing my own system, so I'm sure I know how frustrating it can be, so just send me a message.